Okay, Joseph, you raised your hand there.
I just couldn't hear you. I'm sorry. Okay.
Okay, yeah, I wasn't saying anything. How are you feeling tonight?
Hey, great. Feel like I got another 50,000 miles on my tires
What they
here.
what they do to you? To put a stent in or something like that?
No, no, no. They just took away the extra electricity in the right atrium.
Okay, how did they do
It's
that?
called, well, they started in the femoral vein and
Yeah.
then took a right up the inferior vena cava, landed into the right atrium and put some heat on it and made a scar, and that took away the atrial flutter. So
Hmm.
all's well.
Now, how in the world did somebody figure that out? I don't know.
Well, I'll tell you what, they had a bunch of magnets on top of me.
Wow. Oh, to try to direct that thing, direct
Yeah,
the
exactly. To find out exactly where it was so they could put the scar in the right spot.
Oh wow. Yeah, I know my years ago my brother had open heart surgery for a collapsed mitral valve, and they thought they were going to have to go in there and put in a mechanical or a pig's
Pigs
something or
valve.
another valve in there. And the doc got in there and looked at it. He says, "Ah, no." He says, "I'll put a round turn and a figure eight on that thing, and it'll be fine."
Yeah, that's about what they did. Yeah.
And the heart surgery went just fine. It was the aftercare where they didn't turn him and do and all that kind of stuff that uh, got him these great big bed sores and that what MRSA,
Oh
MSRA,
yeah, the
whatever one of
MRSA,
those
MRSA. Yeah, MRSA.
MRSA.
Yeah.
The darn near killed him, and
Yeah, it will do that.
so
So
yeah.
thank you for your prayers.
Yeah, well, I don't go to hospitals. More people die in hospitals than just about any place I know, so I don't go to them.
Well, they threw me out just after we hung up on the call on Friday. They said, "Get
Yeah,
out of here."
really? Okay, all right. Well, that's good to know that you're doing okay. All right. So here we are. We're got lots to say tonight, and um, we've got 15 people signed in, so 16 people signed in now. So we're good to go, and let's go ahead and get started um, with anybody that's new on here jumping. I don't see anybody new particularly tonight, but anyway, for those that sign on later on, my name is Steve Sheik. I lead the congregation at Tree of Life Messianic Congregation. We meet in Katy, Texas, and we're finishing off the last chapter of the book of Zechariah tonight. And then next week we will start with the book of Malachi. And so let's begin with the blessing. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lasok v'divrei Torah. Blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe, who sanctifies us with his commandments and commands us to engross ourselves in words of Torah. Okay, so here's my ubiquitous timeline that I've used for years and years and years now. And then next week, I'll just move my little red dot, the red thing up here to Malachi. But we're finishing off Zechariah tonight. And as an overview for the chapter 14, the first two verses that talks about a final assault on Jerusalem. This is going to be right at the end of the tribulation period, and then verses 3 to 5, where we see that Adonai himself joins in the fray, and he intervenes in the war as just as Israel and Jerusalem are just about on their last leg, and they're up against the ropes, and it looks like all hope is lost. And then he comes in. That's also when Israel is going to say, Baruch haba Hashem Adonai, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. And so anyway, verses 6 through 8, there's a cosmic renewal or cosmic shaking of the earth there, and talks about living waters coming from Jerusalem. And 9 through 11 talks about the kingship, or the universal kingship of the Lord. And 12 through 19 that talks about worldwide worship. How's that going to work, and where they're commanded to come in and worship. And we'll talk about that more. And then finally, the last two verses, 20 and 21, talks about a final purification, and a that ushers us in then to the millennial period. All right. And just so it's kind of somebody had asked me, he says, well, why, it says millennium, is why do they say millennium? Is that a million? No, a millennium is 1,000 years, and it's I guess they get the word from the French word mille, M-I-L-L-E, and but that's what the millennium refers to as 1,000 years. So, any questions or anything before we before we start into this tonight? Okay, so chapter 14, the last one. Um, Behold, a day of Adonai is coming when your plunder will be divided in your midst. I will gather all the nations against Jerusalem to wage war. The city shall be captured, the houses ransacked, the women ravished. Half of the city will be exiled, but the remainder of the people will not be cut off from the city. Okay, so what we have here, David Stern in his Complete Jewish Bible, now he translated that day is a, a day is coming for Adonai, and whereas the other, what we just read is a day of Adonai is coming. So uh, his thought was, and that not very many other translations are like this, but his thought is that this day it was instigated by him. It was totally orchestrated by God, and so it's the day for him to finish off his work that he's going to be doing with the Jewish people, with the enemies of Israel, and so it's not just another day of judgment. It's a basically the end, the climactic day of the Lord, the last one that brings us to the end of human history as we know it. Because then um, after the tribulation at the beginning of the millennial period, it's going to be different, because we're no longer going to have world government running things. It's going to be Yeshua from Jerusalem running things, and then also you're going to have people who were believers, that they they're going to have glorified bodies. There will, at that point, be immortal. And yet, then there will still be millions, if not billions, of people on the earth who didn't go through that change. They survived the the tribulation, okay, but they were not believers. They didn't believe that Yeshua was the Son of God. They did not make him their Savior, and so they will enter into the millennial period as mortal human beings. And although now, once they're in that tribulation, in the millennial period, they've survived the tribulation. They're in the millennial period now. Their lives will be extended greatly, and to where the Bible says that when someone dies at 100 years old, everybody will just shake their head and say, "Oh, it's such a shame that he died so young." and that people will, live to be 700, 800 years old, and they'll be, marrying and having children and so forth. So that's what's uh, that will be what we're talking about here now is the final day of the Lord before we go into the millennial period. And it's this day is initiated by God, and it's both a judgment and a deliverance. And there's several places in the Bible where it talks about the day of the Lord. It's both. It's a judgment on somebody, but a deliverance for somebody else, and it can go both ways. And actually, sometimes the day of the Lord is nothing but judgment, like in the case of Israel. It's a covenantal thing where they did not follow God's covenants, and so He's judging them in the day of the Lord. Well, and at this one, this is the transition then from the age of rebellion or the church age, or the age, the everything that has gone before, now into the age of the Messiah's universal reign. And so it's this the whole thing that we're talking about here is not just some random catastrophe, but it's a divinely orchestrated eschatological intervention. Okay, and that's what it means by that is that God says, I'm going to go in there and help Israel out right there at the end and kill all the enemies. And that's what he does. Okay. But it just sounded so much nicer to say divinely orchestrated eschatological intervention. All right. So then it goes on to say your spoil will be divided in your midst. Now, Jerusalem's going to be overrun, and this is kind of a shocking thing, but um, it's funny because some of the commentators that I read for this lesson said that, oh well, what it amounts to is that the plunder that they're going to be dividing up is the plunder of the nations that are defeated. But no, we're not there yet. All the other, I only found like one commentator that said that. Everybody else says no. What it'll amount to is that the nations that have overrun Jerusalem at this point, they have control of Jerusalem, and they're going to be so confident in their own ability to keep and hold Jerusalem and defeat all of the little pockets of resistance from the Jews that they're already starting to divide up the treasury of Israel right there within Jerusalem. And so that's what I think what the Bible is saying, that yeah, they're coming in there and they're going to be dividing up the things of Israel. And so then another aspect of this is that it's God Himself that's gathering all the nations against Jerusalem to do battle. So um, really, you see some things there that make begs some questions. Actually, said well, this is all orchestrated by God. Well, why did He bring all of Israel's enemies against Israel right there at the time, and then just let them go and basically kill off most of Jerusalem, and then uh, take over the city, conquer the city, and then ravage all the women, all that rape and pillage stuff. And he's going to do all of that. But then, right before Israel completely falls flat and there's nothing left of Israel, he comes in there and destroys all the enemies of Israel, seemingly overnight. And so, why does he do that? Well, we just don't know. It's not. He's orchestrating everything, and I think what it does is it gives us a view that God is sovereign over everything, every aspect of life. every aspect of the universe. He created it, and he's sovereign over that. So, um, can we explain why he does it just like that? Why didn't he just bring the people, all the armies against Israel right before they attack, then go out and wipe them out? Well, if he did that, then the nation of Israel would basically they wouldn't be looking there and saying uh, that God did it. They would say, well, evidently our forces arrayed here were better. Our Iron Dome is so good, and our jet fighters are so good. But no, when they've lost everything and there is no way to turn, they have no place to go to turn to except to the Lord. And then that's when he comes in and uh, destroys all the enemies. So I think that's one of the reasons that it's going to be playing out like that. Maybe somebody else has some other ideas on that, but it's not going to be pretty, and when you look at it, Israel for generations and generations have broken covenant with the Lord, and he said these are my rules. Will you follow them? They said, yes, we will. And then immediately they didn't. And so they it's a covenantal judgment against Israel. But there again, at the end of the day, there is always a remnant that is saved because God always saves a remnant of the people. Joseph Wang, you have a
Yes,
comment.
I believe this is the time that uh, Antichrist and the false prophet will be thrown into the lake of fire, and then Satan will be hauled for 1,000 years. I think this is the battle be in that period of time, and then after that, after millennium, there will be another battle. That time Satan will be released, and that will be the final battle.
Yeah, well, this one, the one that we're talking about here is the in other places it's referred to as the Battle of Armageddon. Now, this is at the end of the tribulation period, the 7 years, Daniel's 70th week. It's at that time, and it's referred to as the Battle of Armageddon and or the apocalypse, and that's where it says that the blood will run as high as the a horse's bridle, and that's where the Lord is going to come in and save Israel in such a fantastic manner that that they can't help but to chalk it up to anything other than it had to be God that did it. It's not what they themselves could do. And even through Israel's modern history of becoming a nation, and immediately then all the Arab nations came against them, and they had like Israel had like five beat up old World War II airplanes, and yet they were able to defeat all of the air forces of all of the Arabs that are around them, and just over and over, they had I don't know even how many tanks that they were able to cobble together, and yet they won. They beat all the Arab nations, and became a nation. And then same thing in the '67 war, just the overwhelming odds against them. In the '73 war, where the Arab nations again attacked Israel on the Yom Kippur, but over and over again, there were stories of some of these battles, and um, I was talking to a guy who there in Israel who was a retired lieutenant colonel, and we were on one of the up in the northern part of Israel, and where they had a tank battle, and like I don't know one or two tanks held off a whole battalion of Syrian tanks, and it just in a miraculous fashion. And um, so he knew that God had preserved them, but a lot of people would just toss it off to say, no, our courageous soldiers did all of that. So anyway, at this point, at this last battle here, they're not going to have that. They're going to be able to. They're just going to have to look at it and say, all right, well, it's nothing else. It could be nothing else but the Lord. All right. So yeah, that's okay. There's my second page of stuff. All right, now verse 3. Then Adonai will go forth and fight against those nations as he fights in a day of battle. All right, so that's short verse, but it's it's one. This is kind of a dramatic hinge in the chapter, as it were, that verses 1 and 2 describe Jerusalem as being overwhelmed, plundered, and half exiled, and verse 3 then reverses this momentum that Israel is going down. There's the drain is swirling there, and that reverses that momentum entirely, and the nations that gathered to divide Israel now face the intervention of the one true God, the one that they presumed was doesn't even exist. And so this portrays Adonai as the divine warrior. The Israel had been looking for a Mashiach ben David back when Yeshua was on the earth. Well, now they're finally going to get it. And he's going to be the warrior king who is going to defeat the enemies and save all of Israel. And so this picture of God being the warrior is it's not a new one. In Exodus 14:14, Moses tells the people that Adonai will fight for you. And then later on in Joshua 10:14, talks about where Adonai fights for Israel in the land. And Isaiah 42:13, he says, he stirs up his zeal like a man of war. And so Habakkuk 3, there's a theophany there of the warrior God coming in and marching in to save his people. So Zechariah draws on this tradition to show that the final deliverance of Jerusalem is not merely political or military. It's eschatological. It's the end times. This is what God has been working toward. It's a divine act that reveals his kingship over all of the nations. And so, again, where it says, and he fights on a day of battle, it's just this is the culmination of what he's been doing for the people of Israel. And the nations that he's going against, he's judging them. They are the ones that have always tried to destroy Israel. And now they're coming in and the Lord is destroying them instead. So and we'll see here in Zechariah. Zechariah does not say that he doesn't mention the Mashiach explicitly. But what he does is he implies it greatly that this divine warrior, it is God, but we also know that Yeshua, 100% God, 100% man, and he was and for other verses we know that this particular time where that Zechariah is talking about, it is Yeshua that's coming in and doing all of this stuff. So you do have to make that little bit of leap there to pull it out that it is Yeshua there that's fighting the battles for the Jewish people. So, verse 4, in that day his feet will stand on the Mount of Olives, which lies to the east of Jerusalem, and the Mount of Olives will be split in two from east to west, forming a huge valley. Half of the mountain will move to the north and half of it toward the south. So this is going to be just a fabulous, just remarkable geological event. And so, I mean, we can't even really imagine how that's going to be, that they're just going to open up and these mountains will just shift. You know, the earth moves. Now here's a picture. I found several pictures, and you know, they talk about how, well, this is okay. Here we are, right opposite of the temple, where it was in supposedly was in the up on the Temple Mount. I'm not so sure about it, but that's another story for another day. But shows how that this Mount of Olives up here is just going to split and move, just move out of the way. And so it'll be big enough that the people of Jerusalem will be able to flee into that valley and escape the city. Now, there's also, here's another picture that I found, and that somebody had said, well, there is actually an earthquake fault line that runs, you know, they look it down here in the rocks, and so they find it that, yeah, you can't see me pointing to that. All right. And here's that earthquake fault line there, and you can see that it's much further south than the one that is directly here at the Temple Mount, or where the Dome of the Rock is now, and the then the fault line or the earthquake is going to go right through here. We don't know, but you know, God does not need an already existing fault line to create a an earthquake that would split the Mount of Olives into the, you know, just make the northern part of the mountains move one direction and the southern part move in the other direction, and don't totally destroy Jerusalem at the same time. I mean, they're very, very close. You know, it's you can easily walk from the Mount of Olives up to the temple, and that's where, you know, that's where Yeshua did at Gethsemane. It's up there on Mount of Olives. He went from there, then up to they captured him, took him into Jerusalem. So it's not a long journey at all. And um, but this is the return of that warrior. Um, they're a divine warrior, and I believe that, again, where we say that Zechariah doesn't actually mention this as being the Mashiach. There are other verses that do point that out and mention that. So that's what we're doing, and that's what I'll be talking about tonight. Is that I believe it's, you know, where it says Adonai is doing this. Well, yeah, it's Yeshua, because he is, you know, part of the Godhead. That is one God. Okay, it's not three different people sitting up there, one and, you know, and separate from each other, and you know, it's not like that movie. What was the Shack, or the movie or the book where um, I don't know what, if I can't remember all of it because it was so fantastic. But uh, God was a black female that looked a lot like Oprah Winfrey, and uh, the Holy Spirit was a woman, more kind of like a, you know, one of these free spirit hippie types, and I can't think of a Hollywood personality that would match that. But then you had the character of Jesus or Yeshua. And in that regard, to me, the way that they described him, he was a little bit light in the loafers, if you know what I mean. But that kind of fits the image that a lot of these progressive people have about all of that stuff. So, yeah, if you've never read the book, The Shack, don't bother. It's not worth your time. Um, so anyway, why the Mount of Olives? When he comes down and Yeshua's going to fall, come back. Well, one reason is that that's when he went up into heaven from the Mount of Olives, and the angel said, "In the same manner that you saw him go up, he's going to come right back down." And so there it is. He's gonna be there in Mount of Olives. It's going to split up, and um, so that's where he's going to return to. And so you can also look at the valley, the mountains splitting and the valley splitting apart into a huge um, avenue there that the people can walk through, kind of a throwback to the crossing of the Red Sea, where the walls of water had risen up on both sides, and they walked right through the middle of it on dry ground. So anyway, um, that's what that verse is about. And then verse 5. Uh, then you will flee through my mountain valley, because the mountain valley will reach to Azel. Yes, you will flee like you fled from the earthquake in the days of King Uzziah of Judah. Then Adonai, my God, will come, and all the Kedoshim with him. All right, so um, this valley that's going to be created when the mountains move apart, it's going to be very large enough that the people of Jerusalem will be able to just run right through that, and those that have motorbikes can probably get ahead of everybody else, but for the most part it'll be people just walking or running away from Jerusalem. And they said it's going to be uh, like in the days of Uzziah, that um, when was that? That was around 760 BCE, and it was a humongous earthquake. It was very, very significant, and it's one that leaves me, quite frankly, wondering, okay, how did that happen? Because it was so severe. Other parts of Israel, there was, one of their cities in the Decapolis, it just it just fell apart. I mean, that the whole thing just was destroyed, but the temple was not destroyed at that point, and so. But it was a horrendous, horrendous earthquake. And so it's going to happen really quickly. And this is the event where everybody's going to see that Yeshua comes down to the earth. And when he touches the earth, that Mount of Olives is just going to split like crazy. And uh, that's where the people then are going to recognize, I think, part of it, that this side where he said, they'll see the one whom we pierced, and they will mourn for the one who we pierced. But it's going to happen quickly. We don't know when it's going to be. And one there is a little bit there at the bottom, the phrase at the bottom, sentence there at the bottom. It says, "Then Adonai my God will come, and all the Kedoshim with him." Okay, so who are the Kedoshim? It's not really clear, but and I'm not really sure that it's that important, but it's one of those cases where Um, it's going to be a spectacular entrance, basically. And what I think this is that at the end of the tribulation period, Yeshua's coming back right before he hits the ground running. The people that there's where your rapture thing may come in, and that's where the dead in Christ will rise first, and then those that are alive and remain will meet them in the air, and that's when, okay, meet up with him in the air. Will be changed. Our bodies will be changed. Of course, the ones that had died, their bodies certainly were going to be changed because you didn't want a bunch of corpses walking through Jerusalem. Um, so we'll meet the dead, the formerly dead in Yeshua up there in the sky, then come back down and back down to earth, and that's when he touches down and splits the earth. And it's interesting. Somebody at the rabbis' conference was talking about this instance, and they said, well, the Bible says that to be caught up to him in the air, and their interpretation of that was that in the air meant right there in the air where we're breathing. It's not like, okay, we're caught up with him in the ground or somehow we're meeting him in the ground. No, they're saying that it was in the air, meaning right here where we all live and breathe. I don't know. It's not something that I would want to build any doctrine on, but it's going to be a fantastic thing that pops up then when he comes in there and touches down. All right, so comments or questions so far? All right, so it says, in that day there will be no light, cold, or frost. It will be a day known only to Adonai, neither day or night. Even in the evening time there will be light. All right, so here's again one of these fantastic things that's going to happen in the world that are supernatural, and says to be no light, but with no light, no sun, that it would get cold really quickly in the desert, in that desert environment over there. But no, it says there will be no light, but there's not going to be any cold or frost either way, and so it's a day like really no other. And so the reverse, the nature of everything, just the laws of gravity, the laws of whatever these universal laws are going to be kind of upended in a way, and altered. And so the day of the Lord, when is it going to be? Well, God only knows, and he ain't telling. And so but that last thing there where it says, neither day nor night, even in the evening time, there will be light. So what does that mean? Does that mean that God's going to change the trajectory of the moon, and that it's going to have the moon shining, reflecting the light of the sun, or how's that going to work? We don't know. It doesn't tell us at all how that's going to particularly work. But it's only, it's one of those things that God only knows, and he ain't telling. So going on to verse 8. Moreover, in that day, living waters will flow from Jerusalem, half toward the eastern sky and half toward the western sky, both in the summer and in the winter. All right, so they're talking about living waters here. The living waters. It's a sign of divine life, healing, renewal, and so when the Bible does talk about living water, it refers to water that flows, it's fresh, it's pure, life-giving, and it's the opposite of that would be stagnant or polluted water. And so we see all over the Tanakh the idea of Adonai being the fountain of life. You see that in Jeremiah 2:13 and 7:13, and it's cleansing and spiritual renewal. We see that in Ezekiel 36:25 to 27. That's when I was trying to think of that one. And then the um, temple's going to be restored. The temple-centered religion is going to be restored. You see that in Ezekiel also. So a lot of Zechariah's imagery echoes what you see in Ezekiel 47, and that miraculous river flows from the millennial temple, and it brings healing even to the Dead Sea. When that miraculous water from the temple hits the Dead Sea, then it's gonna flourish with life, and it's gonna be I don't know if it's going to change the character of the salt in the Dead Sea, or if it's just going to get it up to the point where it's so diluted that then creatures will be able to live in the Dead Sea. But actually, it's kind of funny. In the recent months they've actually found little fish that are living in the Dead Sea, and who would have thunk it? But it says half of the water will go to the Eastern Sea, that's the Dead Sea, and half of it's going to go to the Western, that's the Mediterranean Sea. And so you got part of it going to east, part of it going to the west. That's a picture of God's blessing toward all the nations. And so it's reverses the curse of the Dead Sea, and a barrenness and all that kind of stuff. And so basically, I guess you could say that no part of the land of Israel is going to be untouched in that day. So this is not just about geography, this is theology. And so we'll see Jerusalem become the spiritual center of that new world. And so it says it flows in summer and winter. That means that the blessings never stop, and so no matter what it is, in Israel, they're very dependent on the rains, because if they don't have the rains, they don't have good crops, and the rain only comes at a certain amount of time during the year, and it's like a 4-month window, and after that, then they don't have any rain, and so this will be just that the blessings will flow all the time. And so I think that what we can look at is that when Messiah comes back, and I'm still trying to quantify this in my own mind and reading what it's going to say that when Mashiach comes back, when Yeshua comes back, that the world is going to shift back toward its the Garden of Eden state, not 100%, not totally, but it'll make a big leap toward that Edenic state that Adam and Eve were kicked out of. And so this particular verse there, it kind of weaves together several uh, several biblical themes. And Eden is restored, temple centered life is restored. There's a new Exodus, water in the wilderness, a new creation, a world healed and made whole, and a messianic reign, universal peace and blessing. So let me see what we had
Yeah,
a
I just
comment.
put a little note on there, Ezekiel 47, 8 to 12. And they said the Dead Sea will become fresh, beaming, uh, teeming with fish, multitudes of very great multitudes of fish. But around the Dead Sea will still be salty. The marshes will still be salty, and they said they shall not be healed, and even some of the trees will become medicinal. So you were correct
Yep.
that they have all in there.
All right, thank you, Joseph. And So I think that's what I've got for that particular verse. Um, verse 9, it says, Adonai will then be a king over all the earth. In that day, Adonai will be Echad, and his name Echad. All right, so what does that mean? All right, so this is um, the idea or the thing where it shows you several things. The universal sovereignty of God, where his rule, his everyday rule, is going to extend all beyond Jerusalem into the entire earth. And of course, we know that God is arranging things and doing that even now, but this is going to be much more evident, and it's going to be hands-on, that they'll know that when people talk about, well, I don't know, I'm just going to have to ask the man upstairs. Well, the man upstairs is in Jerusalem at this point. And so then they're going to have a unity of worship where basically the denominations are going to go away, and there's only going to be one religion, that is the worship of the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And then there's going to be a restoration of order. What did the Bible say? That Yeshua will rule and reign with a rod of iron. And then, so this is um, a messianic fulfillment where the we can look forward to that time where Mashiach does come back to the earth. All right, 10 and 11. The whole land from Geba to Rimmon to south of Jerusalem will become like the Arabah. Jerusalem will be raised up and occupy her place from the Benjamin gate to the place of the first gate to the corner gate, and from the tower of Hananel to the king's winepress. People will dwell in her, and no longer will there be a ban of destruction. Jerusalem will live in security. All right, so what this does, it just gives us a dramatic transformation and a secure restoration of Jerusalem in this age to come. And so these are massive shifts in the way that people have looked at Israel and the Jewish people. It said the land is going to be like the Arabah, which is a flat land. That's uh, all of these mountains. Have you ever driven from, say, from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem? It's seem like it's all uphill. Everything is uphill. Even, I know you have to go down a little bit, but you're constantly climbing in and out of mountains, going up to Jerusalem, as they say. And so all of that land around there was going to be just leveled out, and you know, is that going to be by divine caveat, where God comes in there and he says, divine fiat, I mean, where he just comes in there and levels it out like his hand, where he's taking his hand on the sand, or is it going to be like with people, land movers, like they do in Singapore right now? That Singapore used to be really cool mountains. Well, they cut the mountains down and dumped them into the sea so that they would have more land mass for more industry and more people. So, but Jerusalem will be raised up, it says, and to even be higher elevated than what you would think of than just uh, wiping all the mountains and then just flattening them out. So, but it said the bottom line is that Jerusalem will finally be safe and secure. What a difference that's going to make for everyone, because we just never think of Israel. They're always their head is on a swivel all the time, because always afraid of somebody coming in and doing bad things to them. So 12 and 13. Now this is the plague with which Adonai will strike all the peoples that wage war against Jerusalem. Their flesh will rot while they are standing on their feet, and their eyes will rot in their sockets, and the tongues will not rot in their mouth, and their tongues will rot in their mouths. It will happen in that day that a great panic from Adonai will be among them. Each person will seize the hand of his neighbor and they will attack each other. Okay, so here's a case that just a terrifying uh, judgment that falls on the nations that have attacked Jerusalem. And in this case, it might not be just against the armies of these nations, but the armies and their nation as a whole. It doesn't have to like if the Germans were down there fighting against Israel, it wouldn't be just the German army that was wiped out, but possibility of being the German Deutschland, uh, the country of Germany and its government destroyed also by this by this plague. And so the plague, when they're talking about where the eye sockets rot, and the eyes will rot out, and then some of the other things that they're talking about, where the flesh will fall off of their bodies, and their tongues will rot in their mouth. So what does this look like? I've heard people actually say, well, that's because they're going to use tactical nukes in this battle against Jerusalem. Well, they're going to have to get a whole lot better with their tactical nukes before they can deploy those, because it would be pretty dirty at that point, and they couldn't inhabit the city. They couldn't come in there and take over the city from Jerusalem. And so for that reason, I don't think that we're talking about I don't think we're talking about nuclear, because really God does not need nuclear to have something that their eyes, it says it'll just rot in their sockets, and their tongue will rot in their mouth, and they're just going to be nasty, nasty people. So that's my take on it. Other people may have a different view of it, but at any rate, these plagues are going to cause so much panic against, just whatever, because a lot of these people don't even believe in God. So they're seeing this stuff and they're going to just panic. And then they're going to start attacking each other, possibly to the idea of, well, you guys are the ones that started this. This person or that person, and you're the one that didn't get vaccinated. So now you're giving all of this stuff to us, and they'll fight each other. But it's going to cover all of the nations, said uh, all of the nations. And so that just kind of points to the idea that, you know what, God is sovereign over all of this stuff. And there's no real reason or way that humankind can get out of it and have any other kind of um, any other thought that it's anything other than just the Lord taking care of business. They're going to have to acknowledge that there is a God, and that he is intervening on behalf of uh, his chosen people. All right, so verses 14 and 15. Even Judah will fight at Jerusalem. The wealth of the surrounding peoples will be gathered together, an abundance of gold, silver, and apparel. A similar plague will strike the horse, the mule, the camel, the donkey, and all the animals in that camp. So what we're seeing here is that, and I don't know how it's going to work in modern warfare, because very, very few animals used in anything. But who knows? It's going to happen because the Bible says it's going to happen. But um, anyway, there's a couple of important things here. It says Judah will rise up and join the fight against her enemies. And so at this point, Judah had been so depleted and beaten down, and just they'd given up hope. And then the Lord comes in, ta-da, 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 and they look around, they see that it just gives them renewed strength, and they go off and start charging against their enemies once again. And so all of these nations that are around Jerusalem are going to start giving their treasury or their, whatever they have, silver, gold, it says clothing. All of those things are in the day that this was written in, are um, that's their frame of reference, I guess you'd say, is gold, silver, and fancy clothes. And so that all of that stuff will be used as a system of barter uh, in those days. And so and then it also says that even the animals will be struck, their own animals. Um, I don't know how that's going to work because modern warfare, we don't have too many animals out there, but whatever they do have, they're going to be goners. All right, so let's look at 16 and 17. Then all the survivors from all the nations that attacked Jerusalem will go up from year to year to worship the King, Adonai Sabaoth, and to celebrate Sukkot. Furthermore, if any of the nations on earth do not go up to Jerusalem to worship the King, Adonai Sabaoth, they will have no rain. All right, so what does that mean? Well, that just means that all the nations that have somehow muddled through and gotten through to um, they've gotten through the tribulation, and they've gotten up there. But what's going to happen is that they're going to have to go up to Jerusalem every year at Sukkot, and um, and bring an offering and the worship, bow down and acknowledge that Yeshua is the King of the earth. And so it says if they don't do that, then they're going to get no rain. Well, you know what no rain means? No rain means that you're going to have, back in the day, no rain meant your economy is going to tank because you have no agriculture, you have nothing to trade or barter with. And in so today's world, I would say that the no rain would mean, okay, for some reason, there's going to be an economic collapse, say a run on the banks, or bad investments, or this and that and the other kind of stuff. That's what that's going to how that's going to look. And the rain, absence of rain, or whether it rained or didn't. If it rained, that's a blessing. Where it didn't rain, it's a curse. And so you've got both of those there. 18 and 19. If the Egyptians do not go up and celebrate, they will have no rain. Instead, there will be the plague that Adonai will inflict on nations that do not go up to Sukkot. This is to be the punishment of Egypt and the punishment of all nations that do not go up to celebrate Sukkot. All right, so these people are made to come up to Jerusalem and for Sukkot. So this is a universal expectation. Everybody in the world, every country in the world, maybe not everybody, but every country in the world was going to have to come up and either sacrifice, do the Sukkot sacrifices. If they don't do that, then they're going to have no rain. Well, so why did they talk about Egypt so much? And they singled out Egypt. Well, that's because Egypt does not have, that's one of those loopholes. All the nations are going to go without rain, and Egypt says, we don't need any rain because we got the Nile, and the Nile floods every year, and then it's all good for us. We don't care. And God said, "Oh, no, 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 not so fast. What that plague that happened over here? Well, it's going to come right back on all of you if you don't go up and worship the Lord." And if maybe it's just um, maybe it's just the old curmudgeon in me, but there's going to be some nations that decide that, I'm not gonna do it, and Egypt may be one of them, and they'll, that old deal about cutting your nose off to spite your face. Yeah, I think you're going to see some of that. All right, so last two verses, then I think we can, uh, open it up and let somebody else talk for a minute. In that day, holy to Adonai will be inscribed on the bells of all the horses, and the pots in the house of Adonai will be like the sacred bowls in front of the altar. In fact, every pot in Jerusalem and in Judah will be holy to Adonai Svaot, so that everyone who comes to sacrifice will take them and cook in them. In that day, there will no longer be a Canaanite in the house of Adonai Svaot. All right. So Adonai closes this book with I don't know, it's just a striking vision, I would say, of complete and total, just universal holiness. I guess you'd say that it's a vision of everything that's going to be holy. And it talks about, just the little bells on the horses, meaning, the the smallest thing on work horses are going to have holy unto the Lord. Well, previous to that, before that, the only the high priest, had a headband there, and it said holy to the Lord. And so, but now it says everything in Jerusalem is going to have that same level of holiness, and just everyday household items will be regarded as holy to the Lord, and your pots and pans and stuff like that. So, and why is that? Well, it's because of the presence of the Mashiach on the throne. His presence is so overwhelming that everything in the temple, and then by extension, everything in the city of Jerusalem, is going to be called holy unto the Lord and dedicated to the Lord. And so that's going to be quite the going to be quite the thing there when we see all of that. And it also talks about one last thing here. It says, no Canaanites allowed. And when I when I wrote that, I thought about that old movie, a Disney movie before they went woke, talked about. I think it was, well, it may have been another, not Disney, but it was no dogs allowed, and they basically is a story of some dogs that kind of mischief makers. And they said, well, you're not going to go to heaven because there's no dogs allowed, and so that's what I thought about when it said the Canaanites. Well, who are the Canaanites? They don't really define it, but the smart guys say that, well, they can be interpreted as two different ways. One of them is from a morality and a purity sense, that no more Canaanites, meaning nothing unclean is going to enter God's sanctuary. That even if you're Jewish but you're not living right, you won't be allowed to go into God's sanctuary. Now, in the commercial sense, then they're talking about the temple will no longer be a place of commerce, and um, the money changers in the temple grounds and all that kind of stuff. And so he says, not gonna happen anymore, ever again anymore, and it's going to be a place of worship only. And so that kind of finishes out the story of that Zechariah had painted from the beginning to the end here. And it's going to be a quite glorious ending of the book, but a quite glorious beginning for the rest of us when that that bowl of souls, I guess you'd say, are going to be um, we're just going to be able to live such a wonderful, wonderful life during this time. It's going to be just great. Um, and so, okay, Joseph, yeah, he said, and then he said to me, these waters issued out toward the eastern country, go down to the desert, to the sea. All right, is that the one or is that a new one? Okay, Canaanites, short for canine. Thank you. No, I don't think so. No
Mhm.
dogs allowed. All right, and I think that was it. Okay, and
Yeah, I have
that
two
was that the
questions
one?
for you, Rabbi.
Huh?
I have two questions for you, Rabbi.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
One is kind of kind of off the wall, but I'm pained by why so much disbelief. That's the first question. But you can probably wrap it up with telling all of us, from your perspective, from a Jewish perspective, why do you think the Lord picked the festival of Sukkot versus any of the others? Because
Okay,
that's
that I would think that would be because that was the feast of where God tabernacled with his people. And so this is the time where God is now coming down into this new temple that will be built and living amongst us. So he's tabernacling with us. That's the celebration that corresponded to the Lord taking up residence with the people.
amen. Thank you. That's back in Numbers, I guess, huh?
Hmm.
Numbers
Okay.
or Leviticus or one of those things.
As far as okay, it'd be Leviticus
23 in that
23.
area.
20,
Okay.
yeah, Leviticus 23, 24. Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Martha.
Yes, if you would clear up my confusion over um, how the new Jerusalem here is going to be different from the one that comes down from heaven. How this new picture of Jerusalem, where there's huge earthquake and Jesus standing on the Mount of Olives and stuff. How is this new place, this new Jerusalem, different from the one coming down out of heaven, the new Jerusalem,
Well,
or
this
are
is
they
not
one
the
the same?
okay. The one that we're talking about here, where Yeshua comes back and splits the mountain and all that. That's still the
Uh-huh.
same old Jerusalem. That hasn't changed, and the earth has not changed. But then later on, when they have the new Jerusalem, uh, Peter tells us that that's because the earth has been cleansed. Basically, the old heaven and new earth have been burned away by fire and then renewed. And so then this new Jerusalem is a cube. It's nothing like we've ever seen before in our lives. It's a cube that's like 1,500 miles on a side and 1,500 miles tall, and it's going to sit right there where the old Jerusalem was. And so, how's that going to work physics wise? If you get something that big, um, well, 1,500 miles. Well, really, we only live in the this much of the 1,500 miles. Everything else is space, and there's no air, and so if there's cities, if that's a city where everybody's got mansions and so forth, well, doesn't that make the Earth lopsided? And we'd be just like a tennis shoe in the dryer, man, just bouncing around all over the place. But that's going to be that New Jerusalem. And so, how's that going to work? Well, I think we won't even maybe be orbiting anything at that point because the Lord says that they won't have to have light
No
because the
sun.
Lord will be the light.
Yeah, no sun, no moon.
That's it.
Okay, so these are two different New Jerusalems.
Well, one of them is the same old Jerusalem, only rearranged, and then
Okay,
finally the last
refocus.
one is the New Jerusalem, one that's had never existed before.
So
And
this
And
this
first
one,
one,
that will be at the end of the millennial period.
so Martha, this first one is for the Lord to come down and rule for 1,000 years. You know how everybody wants to rule for 1,000 years? The Nazis wanted to rule for 1,000 years. Everybody wanted to rule for 1,000 years. So here's
Okay.
the times where the Lord is going to rule for 1,000 years with an iron rod.
Yep.
And then after that, we have,
After that, that's when Satan will be released for a. At the end of the millennial period, Satan will be released. He's going to convince some of those mortals that never got saved to fight against God, and it's not going to end well for them. And
mm,
they all get cast with Satan in the pit and the lake of fire. And then at that point, then that's when God says, "Okay, we're going to clean up the earth with fire and start over and with a new earth." And that's where we have the city of Jerusalem, and that's a forever thing. That goes on then for forever and ever. Amen.
okay. All right. Interesting. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
You
Oh,
should ask what Rabbi's going to be doing during that time, that Martha, that 1,000 years.
for that 1,000 years, man, I'm going to
Planting
be
another
growing.
garden.
I'm going to
No,
be
no,
growing the
Martha.
most.
No. Rabbi's going to be a teacher.
Well,
No, no,
I can still be a teacher and
no,
grow
he
some of
is.
grow the most fantastic tomatoes you ever saw.
Yeah,
There you go.
tell her the scriptures what it says for the Jewish people.
Hmm.
Well, it says that they will be, they'll be ministering in the temple, and they'll also be rule. They'll rule and reign with him. But that's what I'm trying. I'm researching now. I'm reading books on the millennial period, trying to find out. Okay, what does somebody think about that? And uh, it's kind of hard because then they'll say something like uh, toward looking toward the end times. It says, well, of course we know that the church is going to be raptured away and have the marriage supper of the Lamb and so forth, and all the sinners and the Jews are going to be on the earth and going to face God's wrath. Well, once they say that, then everything that they say after that is just tainted for me. And so I'm reading a book like that right now. And I'm still waiting to get to the part where he's actually in the millennial period. What is that going to look like? And so far, nobody has given me some answers. So I'll have to just keep researching and researching, and maybe I'll write my own book. So.
So is there going to be a class section, a class division, the Jews against the Gentiles, or and the Jews
Oh
are
no,
reigning over and serving?
no. That's what I'm saying is that when they say that the church will be raptured,
Uh-huh.
okay, at the beginning of the tribulation period, who's left? Well, that's all the people that never accepted the Lord as their Savior, and the Jews who never accepted the Lord as the Jesus as their Messiah. So therefore, all of those people are gonna go through the tribulation and be uh, punished and face the wrath of God and all that kind of stuff. But we who have accepted the Lord, and we, the non-Jews that have accepted the Lord with our wings and our halos and everything, we'll be at the marriage supper of the Lamb. Well, no. But that is the United States, for the most part, the United States concept of end times, where the church has replaced Israel and will be raptured away, and then the 7 years, and the United States, for the most part, is the only place on earth. Maybe there's some other ones, but that teach that this idea of a pre-tribulation rapture. And certainly they don't teach it in Nigeria that I know of. That and there's some other places where I've run into it, and they said, "Oh no, that's an American thing." and it's not scriptural.
Because I
So,
thought Jesus' return was dependent on every Jew bending the knee and claiming him as the Messiah.
well, I think that's when he does come, and Paul says, "And all Israel will be saved." I think that's what he's talking about at that final battle, and that he'll come in and kill
So,
all of the enemies, and then that's when Israel is going to say, "Oh my God," literally, "Oh my God," and
mhm.
that they will mourn the one who they've pierced, and at that point, salvation comes to the Jewish people.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Okay, so have you
Thank
read? I mean, have you started reading that book that on the um, that I've handed out to everybody? Did you get a copy of it?
No, but I haven't
Okay,
been
well,
to service lately, and in case we didn't go this last Saturday, so
yeah, yeah. Okay, so we'll have to make sure because I told everybody read the book and then pass it around to somebody else so that they can read the book. I think it's important enough that I really want to get that word out that the idea of, yeah, we're going to be caught up and all of that kind of stuff, but it's going to be at the end of the tribulation period, not at the beginning. So just be prepared for it.
okay.
Um,
So you
all
have the
right.
name of the book with you?
I
Are you
do.
holding
It's
one?
called, yeah, it's called There's No Santa Claus, No Tooth Fairy, and No Rapture.
For real?
Yeah, that's the name. That's what they call it. No Santa
Okay.
Claus, No Tooth Fairy, and No Rapture. And
Um,
it's written by a guy named Jack Wasson, Wasson.
okay.
Okay.
I'll look it up.
And yeah, he does a really, really good job of laying out the fallacies of the pre-tribulation rapture thought. That only came into being in 1830 to 1836, sometime in that frame, in Scotland, and that's when it started.
Okay.
And nowhere in scriptures was it ever, or anywhere else was it ever taught until 1830s, and that's where Darby and Schofield and some others picked it up and ran with it. It's a very attractive theory, but
Mhm.
it just happens to be incorrect. That's all.
Okay. I'll look it
Uh,
up. I'll get it.
yep. All
All
right.
right.
Well, and if you just hang on, I mean, somebody's got. I bought 20 copies to pass out to everybody in the congregation, and told them when you read it, uh, give it to somebody else and pass it around. I even talked to some of the author people that were affiliated with it at the rabbis conference, and I told them I'd ordered 20 copies of it. And they said, "Well, that's great, but just make sure that when they finish it, they send it off to somebody else so that everybody gets a chance to read it." And I says, "That was the plan. That was the plan."
Okay.
So,
All right. Thank you.
all right. All
Okay.
right. Let me tell you what, before I take any more questions, I'm going to go ahead and stop um, um, stop the recording, and then also stop the share so that I can get off of, um,